condition or you know, some kind of, you know, health frailty.
Because immediately it was immediately like, my phone doesn't make this noise. It was a noise that my phone had never made as well. So it was very, very confusing.
What I'm more upset about is that somebody somewhere, probably in Europe, decided that both of you were worth saving, but for some reason, I'm not.
Do you think we've been selected, Brodie?
I think you might have, and I'm worried what you've done that I haven't done.
Do you live on a hill? Maybe it was people on lower land or something.
Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's the car. Maybe it's...
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it was a bit of a stuff up, really, wasn't it?
Would nobody think about it being the middle of the night here and the middle of the day over there?
Well, that's probably...
You'd hope they would, especially if they're running emergencies. These sort of things matter quite a bit, actually.
Spokespeople often say, we're not quite sure how it happened. Does this apply to your own life? Do you regularly think I'm not quite sure how it happened, or do you have a better handle on why things happen to you?
I think I've lived life with that ethic. In fact, if there's anything, it's kind of reassuring to know that other people can do really, really dumb things, like, for example, wake up half the nation at 3:30 in the morning.
It's a nice, generous view.
I mean, we could be nice to them and say it's obviously human error, and we all, you know, make a couple of those from the rare time to time, you know?
Yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, I rely, every day now, I rely on my calendar and what's in my calendar. If it's not in there, like if the panel wasn't in here today, wouldn't have been here. So I can understand, you know, if you get something wrong like the AM or the PM.
It's an easy mistake to make.
I've slept
AM, PM.
I've done that with an alarm before.
We all get mixed up.
Slept through an alarm because it was set to PM, not AM.
Oh, yeah. I've done that
it's
many
lucky,
times.
It's actually lucky I wasn't in charge of this because it would have happened.
I can tell this. And very briefly, while we're on the subject of sound effects, this. Not supposed to be silent, strictly. It's supposed to be sounding like, hint, hint, this. No. Well, without the sound, not much point in talking about this. It was a sound that's gone around the world of a little Argentinian boy honking after swallowing a toy horn. And his doctor uploaded it to Facebook with the caption, "Beware of what your children play with."
I've listened to it, and the subtitle was, "You're sure to laugh at this." You do. This little kid, I don't know, he's 4 or 5 years old, and every time he opens his mouth, he sounds like a kid's horn. And
it had a happy ending, thank God.
Did it? They managed to get it out. That wasn't explained in the video clip.
But it's a good reminder of things that can happen when children swallow toys. What else can I ask you about before we go? Winston Peters has revived the now venerable idea, and people have talked about this for 15 years, that big sport should be on free-to-air television. And Brodie, I suppose you need a state broadcaster, probably. You need to pay for the rights, you need to pay for the coverage. Do you think it will ever happen again the way Winston wants?
Oh, look, it can't. It's no quick fix. You know, Sky has had a pretty big stranglehold on sport for some time now. But knowing from what TVNZ's done, you know, we've actually got the Commonwealth Games back, free to air. Next year, which is fantastic. The Duke channel is getting a lot of sport. We had Wimbledon and things like that. So the fight back is on. And I do agree that events of national significance, like the America's Cup, for instance, should be live and on free-to-air. Because and the Olympics as well. We pay taxes to support these people. We should be able to watch them. It'd be the end of
Sky, though, wouldn't it? If all those sports that New Zealand first want were in, all the rugby tests, all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No more time to ask you about much, including the Commonwealth Games. I was going to have that as a conversation, but it will hold. Chris Clark, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Jim.
Brodie Kane, always lovely to see you as well.
Always a pleasure, Jim.
We're back tomorrow. Thanks so much for your company, everybody, and John Campbell's up next with Checkpoint.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight on Checkpoint, the latest from Las Vegas. We now know Stephen Paddock put cameras up in his hotel room and the hallway outside it and adapted his semi-automatics to make them fire faster. And if he hadn't been a white man, how different would the reaction from America's conservative political establishment have been? Also tonight, Jane Patterson previews the first round of coalition talks. A hotel in Kaikoura reopens for the first time since last November's earthquake. Passchendaele viewed from 100 years on. Plastic shopping bags countdown begins the countdown to ending their use. And the Syrian refugee who'd made a beautiful garden in a backyard in Lower Hutt only to have it vandalised, how the community's planning to respond. All that and more coming up next.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. The police in Las Vegas have released fresh details about Monday's massacre and all the firearms owned by the gunman Stephen Paddock. The Department of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms says 47 firearms have been found at 3 separate locations. 20 guns were found inside the 32nd floor hotel room used by Paddock to fire on crowds at the outdoor country music concert, killing 59 people. The department spokeswoman Jill Cinder says the arsenal appears to have been purchased legally.
They were purchased in Nevada, Utah, California, and Texas. The gunman purchased rifles, shotguns, and pistols. At this time, none of the guns recovered appear to be homemade.
Jill Cinder says it appears some of the weapons were semi-automatic rifles that Stephen Paddock fitted with a device that converted them into fully automatic weapons. And Stephen Paddock's girlfriend has now left the Philippines for the United States to be questioned about the attack. Mary Lou Danley, an Australian citizen, had been sharing Paddock's condo at a retirement community in Mesquite, northeast of Las Vegas. Investigators are also examining a $100,000 wire transfer Stephen Paddock sent to an account in the Philippines that appears to have been intended for Danley. Preliminary talks to form a new government will get underway in Wellington tomorrow. The New Zealand First Party will meet with the National Party tomorrow morning and Labour tomorrow afternoon. The talks will begin in earnest once the result of the special votes is announced on Saturday afternoon. The New Zealand First leader, Winston Peters, says he'll make his decision by Thursday of next week. Labour's leader, Jacinda Ardern, says she believes that's a realistic timetable.
We're being ambitious around trying to make sure we work through the issues as quickly as we can, but of course making sure that at the end point we've formed a stable, durable coalition government. I think it is absolutely possible to do it within that time frame, but it does mean those preliminary negotiations are very important.
Jacinda Ardern speaking in Wellington this afternoon. Greenpeace has welcomed Countdown supermarkets phasing out the use of plastic bags, but say there's a long way to go to completely rid the country of single-use plastic. Countdown supermarkets will phase out the plastic bags by the end of next year, after recent research found 83% of customers would support the move. The chain says the ban will result in 350 million fewer plastic bags ending up in rubbish tips and the environment. A Greenpeace spokeswoman, Elena De Palma, says Countdown has taken a bold move and more supermarkets need to follow suit. She says plastic pollution in the ocean has a devastating impact on marine life.
Kiwis use 1.6 billion single-use plastic bags every single year, and we do think that it's a small step, but we have to start somewhere.
Elena De Palma from Greenpeace. The country's highest judge has told a group of inmates at Rimitaka prison that the ability to read and write sets people free to fully participate in society. The Chief Justice, Dame Sian Elias, was at a graduation in the jail for prisoners who had successfully completed the Howard League's literacy program or courses run by the Correspondence School. She told them the inability to read leaves on people on the fringe of society and reliant on others to write on their behalf.
You get your knowledge through filters. You can't fill in the forms that our society requires for everything, and you're limited in the help you can give to those you love.
Dame Sian Elias. The graduating inmates receive certificates which they'll be able to take to parole hearings, and which will also show they have skills necessary to find work when they leave jail. Marlborough's mayor says a planned $9 million cycle trail from Picton to Kaikoura could be the single biggest benefit to come out of last November's earthquake. John Leggett says a feasibility report released today shows the Coastal Pacific Trail could deliver a significant economic boost by bringing new visitors and job opportunities to the region. Mr Leggett says it's heartening to see a visionary idea moving ahead after a difficult and traumatic event.
We see this as absolutely crucial for our future, and it's certainly going to give a much-needed boost to our east coast, and it'll be a major driver over the years too for our local economy around tourism and international and domestic tourists.
Mayor John Leggett. Regional income generated by trail users over 20 years is estimated at a low scenario of $68 million or, best case, as high as $130 million. It's 5:05. The Kiwis Rugby League World Cup campaign has been dealt a major blow, with an Australian newspaper saying the North Queensland superstar Jason Taumalolo has chosen to play for Tonga. Taumalolo has made 10 appearances for the Kiwis but played for Tonga in the 2013 World Cup. The Daily Telegraph says Taumalolo is upset with Kiwis coach David Kilwell's decision to omit former captain Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor from the squad because of their disciplinary issues stemming from this year's Anzac Test in Canberra. The Kiwis name their World Cup squad tomorrow. Meanwhile, the New Zealand Warriors have officially confirmed the signing of Kiwis captain Adam Blair on a 3-year deal. The New Zealand netballers are expecting to face a resurgent Australian side in tomorrow night's Constellation Cup opener in Auckland. The Silver Ferns won last month's quad series after upsetting the Diamonds by 10 goals in their first match since the Trans-Tasman split. Ferns coach Janine Southby believes Australia will be far better prepared this time around.
I know they'll be a lot more considerate and careful about what they're releasing into the circle particularly, and they'll do a lot of work to try and get our defenders off their players and ultimately the ball into their shooters.
Janine Southby. Australia have won 6 of the 7 previous Constellation Cup series. And New Zealand basketballer Stephen Adams is in doubt for the start of the new NBA season later this month after suffering a back injury in Oklahoma City's warm-up match against Houston today. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, where would the world be without trucks? We're getting our petrol and diesel heads on with a look at vintage trucks and commercials. We're also at the movies with Simon Morris, and we have the Great Ideas podcast. Megan Whelan is in, leading a panel of experts as they discuss what the great ideas of the future will be. Now there's an idea. Tonight on Nights, following the news at 7 with me, Paul Brennan, in for Brian Crump on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula mainly fine, isolated showers mainly in the west. Bay of Plenty in Gisborne to Wairakapa, fine today, a few showers tomorrow. Some heavy about Bay of Plenty, clearing south of Gisborne from afternoon. Waikato to Wellington, including the central high country, mainly fine today, a few showers spreading north from tomorrow morning, then gradually becoming fine from the south. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, fine with high cloud, a few showers for Canterbury tonight, spreading elsewhere tomorrow morning before becoming confined to the ranges of Marlborough and Nelson in the afternoon. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, rain spreading north, clearing from the south tonight, mainly fine tomorrow but showers developing about Buller. Otago and Southland, a few showers today, mainly fine tomorrow, and the Chatham Islands fine today, showers tomorrow from morning until evening. It's just gone 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina, and thank you everyone for being with us. Coming up on the programme tonight, Coalition Talks. Jane Patterson previews the preliminaries. Plastic bags being phased out of countdown supermarkets and signs of recovery and summer in Kaikoura. But first, almost 48 hours after the Las Vegas massacre that left 59 people dead, 20 critically ill and more than 500 injured, a truly sinister picture of gunman Stephen Paddock is beginning to emerge. Police say the wealthy former accountant and high-stakes gambler planned the attack meticulously, wiring money to his girlfriend in the Philippines and installing his own security cameras inside and outside his hotel room at the Mandalay Hotel. Sarah Robson reports.
He's coming from upstairs in the Mandalay Bay. Upstairs in Mandalay Bay, halfway up. I see the shots coming from Mandalay Bay. Halfway up.
Audio from emergency dispatchers in Las Vegas reveals the first minutes of uncertainty as gunman Stephen Paddock rained bullets on a crowd gathered at the Harvest Country Music Festival.
I'm inside the Mandalay Bay on the 31st floor. I can hear the automatic fire coming from one floor ahead, one floor above us.
Today, as the FBI searched Paddock's room on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, Las Vegas police released more sinister details behind his planning of the massacre.
We received a call at 10:08 p.m. The best of our estimates and video review, he continued to fire at a progressive successive rate for approximately 9 minutes. As you can see by any video you see in the public space, it was hard to determine where they were coming from. Once it was evaluated, it was coming from the Mandalay Bay. As you can imagine how hard it would be to pinpoint the room from the outside.
Officials revealed Paddock wired $100,000 to the Philippines, where Paddock's girlfriend Mary Lou Danley was holidaying with family in the days leading up to the shooting. Clark County Sheriff Joseph Lombardo said Paddock had planned the massacre to such detail. He had booked 2 hotel rooms, had more than 10 suitcases taken to his rooms, and had even installed his own security cameras.
There was cameras located outside of the room and inside of the room, along with the firearms.
And he had set up how many cameras?
I don't know what the specific numbers do, you know, Aaron? Well, I anticipate he was looking for anybody coming to take him into custody.
The FBI said it had found 23 guns in Paddock's hotel room and at least 19 firearms, plus explosives and other ammunition at the 64-year-old's Mesquite home.
This individual is premeditated, obviously premeditated. The fact that he had the type of weaponry and amount of weaponry in that room, it was pre-planned extensively, and I'm pretty sure he evaluated everything that he did in his actions, which is troublesome.
Eric Paddock said it was beyond comprehension his brother had wired money to his partner and then caused such horror.
There's just no connection there for me. I don't understand how Steve got to that point. I mean, he didn't plan this for 35 years. He didn't plan this for 35 years.
Eric Paddock described his brother as a financially well-off enthusiast of poker and cruises, with no history of mental health issues.
When Steve can do this, we are in deep shit. Because there's just nothing there. You find me where someone who's like Steve does this, I hope the hell they find when they do the autopsy that there's a tumor in his head or something. Because if they don't, we're all in trouble. I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but I'm as touched by this. My brother's dead. Who wasn't this guy who did this? He's dead. I liked my brother.
Eric Paddock said the family wasn't planning a funeral for Stephen as he wasn't religious and they didn't want any more attention. But while Stephen Paddock's past did not draw police attention, his father's did. It has also been revealed Bruce Erickson, also known as Benjamin Paddock, escaped from prison in the 1970s, where he had been serving a 20-year sentence for robbing a bank. He had run a bingo parlour, which he had registered as a religious institution, although authorities said it was a gambling ring.
We are simply a church, and there's no way for them to escape it.
Paddock Sr. was captured and sent back to prison, but on his release he disappeared and is now presumed dead, although his death was never formally recorded. 20 people remain in hospital in critical condition following the weekend shooting, and at least 100 others remained in hospital needing further treatment. Trauma surgeon Douglas Fraser said there was still an urgent need for blood donations.
This was unfortunately very high caliber rifle, and so the fragments and fracture patterns are a little bit different than we usually see with a handgun, and some devastating wounds associated with such a high caliber. And we've seen injuries from unfortunately, gunshot wound to the head, to chest, arms, legs, abdomen, kind of all over. We also saw blunt injuries from people that were trying to run from the scene and rolled their ankles or got trampled, or we had one struck by a vehicle because of the event and trying to run away from the scene and run to safety.
Police also released photos of some of Paddock's victims, including the youngest casualty, 20-year-old Bailey Schweitzer, who had just started a new job as a receptionist at a software company. The FBI said the investigation would continue despite Stephen Paddock's death. Homeland Security said there was no evidence to suggest Paddock had contacts with foreign or domestic extremist groups, and he had no criminal history. For Checkpoint, Sarah Robson.
So in total, Stephen Paddock had more than 40 guns. 12 of the semi-automatics had devices attached to make them work like fully automatics. But it looks like he was able to buy them all legally. Time for a national debate on gun control? Well, no. according to the White House and many Republican members of Congress. They say it's time to pray and to grieve. Richard Wolff is the US columnist for The Guardian, and in a column that's already been shared thousands of times, he compares the restraint of that response to responses when similar attacks aren't done by white men.
You know, what we know of the shooter so far is that he possessed enormous amounts, unfeasible amounts of firepower in terms of ammunition and rifles. And what happens at these times is a sharply different public reaction. And I mean public reaction from public officials, not from the general public. It divides along political and cultural lines, and let's be clear that we are talking about both here. But where there is a mass shooting, a mass stabbing that involves a person of color, especially someone of Muslim origin, or simply from a country where there is a majority Muslim population, there is a rapid-fire response from conservatives in America who say this is about terrorism, we need to be tough on terror. There is no corresponding reaction to the vastly more bloody scenario that happens daily on the streets of American cities, which is about violence within the cities, within a largely African-American population. No discussion whatsoever. But when it comes to the situation we just saw, which happens all too frequently, a white shooter causing mass casualties who's a gun devotee, we're told by conservatives that this is a time of mourning, a time of praying, and all of those things may be true, but it is also a way to push aside the debate that they very much want to have when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to someone of a Muslim faith, which is about ideology. We never discuss ideology when it comes to someone who's white, and these racial and cultural barriers are also preventing us from dealing with the very real problem of mass death, mass gun violence in America.
You quote Sarah Huckabee Sanders at the media conference at the White House yesterday, saying this is a day of reflection, a day of mourning, a day for gratefulness for those who were saved. I think there will certainly be a time for policy discussion to take place, but that's not the place we're in at the moment. And you contrast that with Donald Trump's own tweets after attacks in London, where he is savagely critical of the state of affairs that allowed that sort of attack to arise.
Yes, look, the journalists in all of us say, wait until you have the facts. And that was the note that the White House was striking in the immediate aftermath of what happened in Las Vegas. But all too often, especially with this president, there is no seeking of facts. There are assumptions made and broadcast on social media. There are personal attacks made on public officials in allied friendly countries, and it's just very hard to reconcile the two approaches, what we saw after Las Vegas from this White House and what we've seen after every other mass casualty event, especially those overseas, especially those involving anyone who seems of an exotic origin.
The big question now is, and we had the US ambassador to New Zealand on the program last night, and he, in good faith, he tried to answer the question, how do you reconcile the obvious, compelling case for gun control against the power of the Second Amendment advocates, the NRA and all the congressmen and women who support them and indeed have received donations from them. And he started out with a hiss and a roar, and in the end he ran out of puff. I mean, he simply couldn't answer the question. How does America reconcile those two completely different worldviews around the right to bear arms? Can America bridge that gap?
Well, it absolutely can. And actually, if you listen to public opinion, there is massive support for reasonable, rational, control efforts to bring safety to gun licenses and the people who can possess guns. Nobody's actually saying ban all guns. It's not an either or. It's not black or white. It's not There's no right to bear arms, or there's right to bear every single arm you could ever imagine, and even turn semi-automatic rifles into practically fully automatic ones. That's not the debate that's happening, and that is a construct of the National Rifle Association, which has dominated this debate. But the vast majority of public opinion in America is for rational safety around guns. That means not having assault weapons. That means not having semi-automatic rifles or even things that approach fully automatic rifles. That means not having armor-piercing bullets and having rational, reasonable background checks on people so that people who have mental problems don't actually go out and buy vast amounts of ammunition and high-powered weaponry. So that's where the public opinion is, and yes, like any democracy, well-organized interest groups can have undue influence. It really is about the majority organizing themselves and saying, this is what we stand for, this is what we demand, and you may feel under pressure from the NRA, but you're going to feel even more pressure from the voters who put you into office. And until the majority finds its voice, I'm afraid the minority is going to be unduly influential.
Richard Wolff, US columnist for The Guardian. Let the courting begin. The first talks between National, New Zealand First and Labour, not all three of them obviously, will be held at Parliament tomorrow. There have been a few phone calls in the week or so since the election, but now preliminary discussions will begin. But attention is still firmly on the results of the special votes which come out on Saturday afternoon. We'll have them live here on RNZ, and that's when the final election result will be announced. Our political editor Jane Patterson beams in now from Parliament. Hi Jane, welcome to Checkpoint. How much progress will actually be made tomorrow?
Look, this is really the period where the parties are going to be scoping each other out, talking about the principles by which they're going to negotiate and maybe setting some very broad policy parameters, trying to identify where there might be areas that may cause some problems. It's also going to be quite important for forming the teams. So both Bill English from National and Labour's Jacinda Ardern have both said that they're going to try to structure their teams according to the negotiations with New Zealand First. So if there's leader to leader, then make sure that the leaders of those parties are there, and also the size, the expertise, all of that sort of thing. So really these first steps to be settled tomorrow, but important because we have the specials on Saturday, and then we have a deadline next Thursday, a self-imposed deadline for New Zealand First, so really not a long time at all.
Jane, you have the special results, don't you? Which is the final election results live on RNZ at, I think, 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock. But how important are they, and why are they so important?
So in this particular election, we've had National with a bigger vote, the majority vote so far with the biggest party, and then we have Labour and the Greens with a combined vote that is still smaller than National. Now, New Zealand First's leader, Winston Peters, has given this particular significance because he has said that he will not start talks in earnest until he knows the results of those votes. Labour also is very cognisant of the fact that if they can get between either them and the Greens an extra vote, which means National potentially, or maybe even New Zealand First could lose a seat, it brings that gap closer together. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the convention or the mandate that a bigger party has under MMP. Under MMP, the rules are the first one to get to 61 wins. That's the rules. Yeah. But there is definitely a sign coming from Winston Peters that he would like to, that there is a balance in terms of who the public voted for, and that is when he will make his decision from there in terms of the talks that will start potentially on Sunday.
Jane, what's been going on behind the scenes in Welly?
So the formation of the teams, as I've just mentioned, but also a very important part of these negotiations is going to be policy and where the parties, National and New Zealand First, and the other bloc potentially New Zealand First, Labour and the Greens, can work together. Now, if there are going to be big issues or big obstacles, that's going to have to be addressed. And one, for example, is National and New Zealand First have a different policy on superannuation, and superannuation very key to New Zealand First's policy manifesto. So that's something they'll have to figure out. Labour and New Zealand First have areas of common in immigration and that sort of thing, but there will be some areas that they're going to have to discuss, and one that Jacinda Ardern talked about today is the minimum wage. They have different goals for that in terms of where they would like it to be. So they've all been scouring each other's policy, going into those talks to be prepared to know where Mr Peters or New Zealand First they might line up with, but also where there might have to be some work put in.
Jane Patterson, our political editor, joining us live from the debating chamber at Parliament. Thanks so much, Jane. Countdown supermarkets have vowed to get rid of single-use plastic bags by the end of next year. The move has been welcomed by many, including Greenpeace, but they say it's a drop in the ocean and more needs to be done to ban all single-use plastics. Looking at this for us is our reporter, Sally Murphy.
Did you want the meat in a separate bag? No, it doesn't.
During the usual lunchtime rush at Countdown Ponsonby today, I was surprised that most people had bought their own bags.
I really hate plastic. I hate that it's so bad for the environment. I also hate that it's such a lot of oil goes into producing it as well. So I keep bags in my car so that if I have something that unexpectedly that I buy, I've always got a bag for it.
That's Claire. She's been using reusable bags for 25 years. She's over the moon Countdown will phase out the single-use plastic bags.
I think it's great, but I think it should. I don't see why it needs to happen it can't happen faster.
Those who didn't have reusable bags were almost embarrassed to talk.
I mean, I usually bring my own bags, but because I was out somewhere else today, I didn't bring any bags with me, so yeah. But I'd usually bring my own bags because then we don't have to try and get rid of these.
Countdown spokesman James Walker says they've been looking at getting rid of the plastic bags for about 2 years, but a recent study which showed 83% of their customers supported it helped them make the final decision.
The first thing we really want customers to do is to bring their own bags because that's going to have the best outcome for the environment, and obviously it's the most cost-effective thing to do. We know that it's really easy to forget your bag or leave it in the boot or leave it at home or whatever, so there will be a very affordable, sustainable option at checkout. We've already gone plastic bag-free on Waiheke Island, and over there we've got a compostable option at checkout.
Mr Walker says the ban will result in about 350 million fewer plastic bags a year going into landfill and the environment.
We considered a charge as part of what we could do, but at the end of the day, if you're charging for plastic bags, you're still providing them. So we thought, well, that's not really the right outcome for the environment. And obviously, it didn't feel right for us to charge plastic bags and sort of keep the money for revenue. So that's why we decided not to do it.
The phase-out of plastic bags is part of 20 sustainability commitments the supermarket chain will announce next month. Mr Walker says reducing produce wrapped in plastic is part of that. Greenpeace spokeswoman Elena De Palma says Countdown deserve massive props for phasing out the plastic bags completely rather than charging like Pack and Save.
A recent study has shown that 1 in 3 turtles that have been found dead on New Zealand beaches have swallowed plastic. That's an example that plastic is devastating on marine life.
Greenpeace is calling on the government to ban all single-use plastics as soon as possible. About 40 countries, including Kenya, China, France and Italy, have banned, partly banned or taxed single-use plastic bags. Mr Palmer says Countdown getting rid of the bags is a start, but there's still a long way to go.
Kiwis use 1.6 billion single-use plastic bags every single year, and we do think that it's a small step, but we have to start somewhere.
Mr Palmer says people need to remember to use their reusable bags as many times as possible to make them environmentally friendly. Last month, New World put out a survey to customers asking if they would pay 5 cents, 10 cents or prefer to keep plastic bags free of charge. There was no option to have no plastic bags. In a statement, Foodstuffs, which owns New World and Pack and Save, congratulated Countdown on the move. It says it's looking forward to the results of its own bag vote next week. For Checkpoint, Sally Murphy.
A popular hotel in Kaikoura will reopen its doors to the public tomorrow, nearly 11 months on from the 7.8 magnitude earthquake which forced its closure. The Kaikoura Business Hotel had to turn away guests and cancel hundreds of bookings after the November 14th quake left the 130-year-old building badly battered. But the hotel's co-owner, Jen Barnes, told me they're now preparing for a really busy summer season despite a difficult road to get there.
It's been very, very tough. Going from a full 24/7 operation, which the hotel was, and we were fully booked all the way through till April. Wow. Going from that to absolutely nothing was, I think, the very hardest part psychologically. In terms of income, I can't thank the government enough, strangely enough. The income support that came through really quickly saved not only us but our staff, who we kept on team all the way through.
Are you getting bookings already?
We opened up for bookings about 2 months ago, and we're getting about a dozen, 2 dozen bookings a day on average. And Warren just told me before that we got 30, 35 overnight last night. So it's just snowballing now that the news of the North Road opening, reopening in December, has really started hitting the ground and hitting travel agents.
Where are you? Because I can see in the doors behind you a reflection of what looks like the ocean. Are you right down on the waterfront there?
You know the peninsula of Kaikoura?
Well,
we are about halfway down, facing north.
How wonderful. What a spot.
On the Esplanade.
Right, so the fact that you are getting bookings and you are reopening is speaking also of the fact the town itself is starting to come back to life, and summer, when it arrives, and the holiday season is going to be a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Oh, look, it sure is. I've been stunned and impressed how the town has gone through the winter as well, supporting the road crews and all the ancillary parts of that. It's really ticked over, but we're all looking forward to a pretty full recovery and a decent summer. We're all rather hopeful, yeah, looking good.
Did you ever consider leaving, or did you determine from the very beginning after the earthquake that you were going to stay and rebuild and stick with that glorious community?
Totally. Never a question of leaving. I'm stubborn.
And your staff all stayed, and you didn't lose anyone? No one left?
We had a core staff that have stayed with us, and we're picking up a few new ones coming on for this summer. But yeah, our core team stuck together, and that is a big thank you to the financial support government subsidy.
I also think we should give some credit to the road crew, because we've early on said, gosh, they're not going to get it done by Christmas. But they've done an amazing job getting State Highway 1 open to the north, haven't they? Or working on it anyway.
It's amazing. Like, it's ahead of schedule, and it's done cheerfully. Like, when you're driving through, they're just happy at their work, and we're so appreciative.
Well, I can't wait to come and visit you there, and congratulations on reopening. It's really, really exciting, and we hope you have the most bumper summer.
I know, so do we, and I'm opening with a champagne bar here too, so do pop in.
Thanks, Gina. Well, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. Congratulations. 27 minutes to 6. Yes, it's very exciting that Kaikoura is getting up and running again. That was Jen Barnes. You can hear more about the earthquake and the recovery from it inside this Sunday morning. Our excellent Christchurch reporter, Maya Burry, is looking at how that town is working its way back from 8 on Sunday. Coming up on Checkpoint, US President Donald Trump tells Puerto Ricans they're fortunate Hurricane Maria wasn't as deadly as Hurricane Katrina, and throws some paper towels around. And the Lower Hutt community rallies to support a Syrian refugee after he returned home to find his beautiful market garden vandalised. Would love your feedback, particularly on the plastic bag issue. Lots of it coming in already. You can text us 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. And of course, our email address is checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. Here is Katrina with the 5:30 headlines.
The police in Las Vegas have been giving more details about the extent of the planning that Stephen Paddock put into his deadly mass shooting. Sheriff Joseph Lombardo told reporters Paddock put several cameras around the hotel room from where he launched the attack that killed 59 people at a music festival. Mr. Lombardo says there are still no clues as to why he carried out the massacre. The Department of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms says 47 firearms have been found at 3 separate locations, 20 of them inside the hotel room. Preliminary talks to form a new government will get underway in Wellington tomorrow. New Zealand First will meet with National in the morning and Labour in the afternoon. The talks will begin in earnest once the result of the special votes is announced on Saturday afternoon. A state of emergency continues for the volcano on Vanuatu's Ambai Island, though the country's geohazard department says the eruption from the Manaro Vui crater lake has stabilised. The minister in charge of Vanuatu's Disaster Management Office, Ham Lini, says the volcano is still at the second highest alert level. Greenpeace has welcomed Countdown supermarkets phasing out single-use plastic bags, but say there's a long way to go to completely rid the country of them. Countdown supermarkets will get rid of the bags by the end of next year, after recent research found 83% of customers would support the move. The chain says the ban will result in 350 million fewer plastic bags ending up in rubbish tips and the environment. Marlborough's Mayor John Leggett says a planned $9 million cycle trail from Picton to Kaikoura could be the single biggest benefit to come out of last November's earthquake. And a cycling and walking trail is set to become the first project to open in Christchurch's residential red zone. It'll run from the city to the sea along the Avon River. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6.
Gosh, that could be quite a magic walk. Thanks, Katrina.
I think so, yeah.
Let's go to business news now. Jonathan Mitchell beaming in from Wellington. Hi, Jono. Welcome. Bit of a commodity theme tonight. What's the latest snapshot on prices?
There was a broad lift in commodities in the month of September. This is ANZ Bank's Commodity Price Index, a lift of 0.8% last month, a first rise since the middle of the year. So if we delve into the detail, dairy lifted. That's off the back of higher butter and cheese prices. Really, butter's going strong. Supply and demand at play there. Other prices, meat, wool, fruit, seafood, forestry and aluminium prices made gains. On the other side, the lower New Zealand dollar is helping to lift returns, and that's expected to continue. And ANZ makes the point that commodities will continue to give the economy some drive, some momentum. And we've heard that we're nearing the end of the current economic cycle. Things such as housing, construction, tourism and migration have peaked, so in comes commodities to fill that gap to give the economy some momentum.
Staying with dairy prices, well, commodity prices, the overnight auction disappointed. $6.75 kilo of milk solid payout forecast may be in doubt. Is that the case, Jono?
Depends really who you talk to. A range of views out there. As you say, we had the GDT, the Global Dairy Index, out overnight. Overall fall, and the key commodity whole milk powder, which helps determine that payout to dairy farmers, was down. That's against expectations of a rise, and it gives a sense of the volatility out there. Here in New Zealand, production has been lower and it was a wet start to spring, so that's supported prices, especially for whole milk powder. But really, it's all dependent now on what production gets up to here in New Zealand and where the weather heads. ANZ says the current forecast payout at $6.75 per kilo for the current season slightly looks a bit high at the moment.
Right.
But if you go across the road to ASB Bank, they're saying, no, it's fine. There's some upside risk, so it's really hard to pick at the moment, all really down to weather and production.
What happened on the markets today, Johnny?
There was a lift, gained 16 points to end Wednesday at 7,950. It's a few points off its record high. The dollar's moved around a bit as well, trading at 71.8 US cents and 91.4 Australian.
Jonathan Mitchell from Wellington with today's business news. Thank you. Let's stay with a money theme. Auckland's housing market has stalled in the last 3 months and could remain in limbo for some months. This is in terms of valuation. The latest QV House Price Index shows Auckland house prices edged down by about 0.6%. There's no about it. That's an exact figure. 0.6% in the third quarter of this year, and we're barely higher, up 0.8% for the year. Nita Blake-Person reports.
At 2,100,000, take 10 from there. First call then in front, 2.1. Second call done. Third and final time at 2,100,000.
There were plenty of spare seats at real estate company Barfoot and Thompson's auction in central Auckland today. This home was one of just 4 of the 10 available that sold. Jenny, one of the successful bidders, says she had expected much more competition.
Certainly less buyers or bidders at auction than there was a couple of years ago. And what I've seen with the houses that I've been looking at is there's a lot of houses just sitting on the market, not turning over.
The average price in Auckland is now $1,039,000, 90% higher than the previous market peak of 2007. Barfoot and Thompson sales last month were down just over 15% on the previous month, a fall it puts down to the added uncertainty of the election. ASB Chief Economist Nick Tuffley says two conflicting forces seem to be at work in the market. On one hand, historically high prices have put off buyers, but on the other hand, there are not enough houses being built to meet demand.
So we're in a bit of a tug-of-war between one thing that suggests house prices should be flat or going down slightly, and another suggesting that house prices should be going up. So we just see the Auckland housing market being pretty sideways for quite some time.
Westpac notes rising interest rates globally have dragged New Zealand's fixed mortgage rates higher. Its chief economist Dominic Stevens says at the same time, difficulty attracting deposits has made banks here choosier about who they will lend to.
That has affected the housing market. Higher mortgage rates, if you think of mortgage rates rising from, say, 4% to 4.5% at today's very high median house prices in Auckland, for example, that's quite an impact on affordability.
The figures show the effect is not reserved for Auckland.
House price inflation in pretty much all regions of New Zealand has slowed. Prices are now falling in Auckland, Northland, Waikato and Bay of Plenty, and also Canterbury.
Like many in the country, the housing market may be waiting for some post-election certainty. Mr Stevens says it's possible there will be some sort of relief rally if a national New Zealand First coalition government is formed and the possibility of a capital gains tax is finally off the table. In Auckland for Checkpoint, Cornita Blakeperson, TNA.
US President Donald Trump has made an extraordinary visit to Puerto Rico, telling officials they should be proud that hundreds of people didn't die after Hurricane Maria, as they did in a, quote, real catastrophe like Hurricane Katrina. 2 weeks after Maria brought widespread devastation, the US territory is still without power. Fuel, food and water are also being rationed. But that didn't faze the president, who committed to the island's recovery whilst throwing rolls of paper towels into a crowd. Rowan Quinn reports.
Queuing in Puerto Rico has become the norm. 2 weeks after Hurricane Maria devastated the US territory, residents scramble for food, fuel and cash. A 40-metre-long line outside this Walmart in San Juan as people brave scorching heat to buy food and water. A notice hanging outside warns shoppers of restrictions on water, milk, bread and meat.
The line is long. Yeah, everybody wants to buy food, water, the groceries, because everybody is packaged from 1 week, because this is the usual. Every time a storm comes, in a week we have light and water and everything.
The island remains without power. Those businesses that are open are operating on generator, but the outages have disabled ATMs, forcing businesses to insist on cash payments and forcing people to also queue at banks.
Everybody wants to take out money from the bank because the machines are not working, so that's why. Because of Maria, we don't have service, internet service, and almost everything. No electricity.
As residents queued, US President Donald Trump touched down on a mission to reassure people he's committed to the island's recovery. Inside the airport hangar, he came face to face with San Juan's mayor, Carmen Yulin Cruz, for the first time since she criticised his government's slow response to the crisis. Mr Trump then posed for selfies at a supply distribution centre where he threw paper towels into the crowd. He then held a briefing telling Puerto Rican officials the disaster will put a huge strain on the US budget.
Now, I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the, every death is a horror, but if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was just totally overpowering. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. What is your death count as of this moment? 17?
16 certified.
16 people certified. 16 people versus in the thousands. You can be very proud of all of your people, all of our people working together. 16 versus literally thousands of people. You can be very proud. Everybody around this table and everybody watching can really be very proud of what's taken place in Puerto Rico.
As part of their visit, the President and the First Lady then accompanied Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rossello on a tour of a residential neighbourhood.
So, how long have you been in the house?
In this house, about 20 years.
And how long have you lived in Puerto Rico?
Well, we've come and gone for most of our lives, but most of it
in Puerto Rico. You always come back, right? You always come back.
Puerto Rico is Puerto Rico.
So let me ask you, though, you've never seen anything like that?
No.
Like
And we were in
never been anything like that.
Exactly, but Maria was the best.
Did you feel safe in the house during the hurricane?
Well, since it's concrete, we were safe.
Fuel's been rationed to $20 per person at a time in Puerto Rico, causing disruptions to traffic and public transport. And while San Juan Airport's reopened, its capacity's been cut to 25%, with many passengers left stranded at the airport waiting for flights. According to the Puerto Rican government, only 60% of supermarkets, 27% of banks and 15% of restaurants have resumed operations. For Checkpoint, Rowan Quinn.
So much feedback coming in on plastic bags. You've actually crashed the text recipient system. Top work. We'll have some of it coming up. The leader of the Spanish region of Catalonia says it will declare independence from Spain in a matter of days. In his first interview since Sunday's controversial referendum, Carles Puigdemont says his government would act at the end of this week or the beginning of next. The independence referendum ended in an overwhelming yes vote, but sparked a violent response from federal police acting on orders from the Spanish government. Today, hundreds of thousands have taken to the streets of Catalonia for a general strike in protest at the government's response. The BBC's James Reynolds reports.
Throughout the day here, thousands of pro-independence demonstrators marched through the streets of Barcelona. I spoke to two of them, Susanna, an engineer, and firstly Jordi, a pharmacist.
We've come out to show the world what's about democracy, about freedom, about liberty.
You don't feel free at the moment?
Not at all.
Why not?
Because we are not able to speak and to show Spain the difference between us and them.
I love Catalonia. I didn't expect this from Spain, to be honest. I'm quite against the violence. I know that they thought it was illegal, but the violence is never, never.
But Madrid rejects these views. And Spain's King Felipe felt compelled to deliver his first ever address at a moment of national crisis.
Hoy la sociedad catalana está fracturada y enfrentada.
Today, Catalan society is fractured and threatened. The authorities there have underestimated the effects and the feelings of solidarity that unite and will unite Spaniards. And with their irresponsible behaviour, they could even put at risk the economic and social stability of Catalonia and of Spain as a whole.
At a bar here in Barcelona, one group of viewers watched the King's speech in perfect silence. They then swore at the screen and returned to their drinks. And the leader of Catalan's devolved government, Carles Puigdemont, has told the BBC that his region will go ahead and declare independence in the next few days.
We'll probably do this when we have the votes in from abroad, at the end of this week or thereabouts. So we'll act at the end of the week or the beginning of next week.
If that happens, Spain may enter a period of profound constitutional crisis.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time in Spanish history, and that's a pretty high bar too. James Reynolds in Barcelona. The battle that became a byword for the horror of the Great War is the subject of a new exhibition that's opened its doors in Wellington today. More than 800 New Zealanders lost their lives in a single day on the 12th of October 1917 in Passchendaele in Belgium. Te Aniwa Hurihanganui went to check out the exhibition that looks at one of the darkest days in New Zealand's military history.
Some terrible blunder has been made. Someone is responsible, but the papers will all report another glorious success. And no one, except those who actually took part in it, will know any different.
New Zealand has lost many soldiers to war, but never as many on one single day as October 12, 1917. In a few short hours, 843 New Zealand soldiers were slaughtered, while close to 2,000 more were wounded. The horrors of the Battle of Passchendaele are now being retold in an audio-visual display at the Great War Exhibition. Some of those attending the exhibition called it eye-opening.
It's quite startling to go in there and sort of see some of the images, particularly the ones of the dead bodies. There's one that sort of, I guess, stands out the most. He looks quite young, even like a child nearly.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't there. Yes, oh, gee, it's unbelievable thinking how they were in that mud and knee-deep and cold and wet. Oh, no.
And you'd think people would learn from that, wouldn't you? It's dreadful, dreadful.
During the battle, soldiers aimed to take the high ground to attack German troops along the Belgium coast. But heavy rain and months of artillery bombardment turned the Belgian plains to mud, making it extremely difficult to move, break through German barbed wire, or aim artillery. Among the troops who died in the struggle was Captain George Gradwell, the great-grandfather of Jack Gradwell. Mr. Gradwell donated his great-grandfather's camera and bayonet for the exhibition and says it's been emotional watching what his great-grandfather went through.
You sort of look at it and it brings into a clearer essence how extreme a human experience the Battle of Passchendaele was, and illuminates the fact that it really wasn't that long ago.
The exhibition is a multi-screen display of photographs taken during the battle and projections on the floor depicting the mud and rain. The exhibition manager Ian Ward says the gruesome images offer a confronting reality of what went on.
I imagine people will be somewhat taken aback. It's not pretty. The reality was Passchendaele was awful, and we would really like people to understand that, but also, you know, one of the main reasons why we're here is so that we don't do this kind of stuff again.
The Passchendaele exhibition is the fourth of 7 temporary Great War exhibitions and will close early in December. For Checkpoint, ko te aniwa, hurihanga nui tēnei.
Home again. Khaled al-Jouja fled war-torn Syria with his wife and 3 children 5 years ago. After crossing into Lebanon, they spent 4 years in limbo as they waited to get refugee status. The family finally made it to New Zealand last year and settled in the Hutt Valley, where Khaled established a market garden in the backyard of his state house. A pretty intensive one at that. He had over 2,000 vegetable plants and flowers. The food he grew helped feed hungry local families, and his dream was to start a potting nursery. Things were going beautifully until yesterday morning. Julia Milne from the Common Unity Project, a local charity, picks up Khaled's story.
He has a Housing New Zealand house, and it's probably about 1/8 of an acre, and every single part of it is now in garden and food production. And he built himself, with the support of the community, a great big greenhouse, which he has been propagating plants in for about the last year. So his whole property is kind of filled up with thousands of bedding plants, and he had just launched his little business a few weeks ago with the support of the community. This is us as a charity have been supporting him with this, but also being the conduit for so many people who just wanted to give him the resources that he needed to get going. And a lot of it is really...
Can you describe, so had you been to the garden? Obviously you had.
Yes.
And can you describe it? What was it like?
It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I've never seen such intensive production go on in someone's backyard.
Yes, it sounds absolutely beautiful. And what was, and he was, and so he was growing some, vegetables, so some greens, for want of a better term, and these were going to local community sort of projects to feed the hungry, right?
Oh, 2 facets to what he's been doing. Part of it is, yes, he works for us and we task him with growing as much food across lower huts through our Urban Kai project to feed back into the community via meals. So that's a prodigious thing in itself. But the other part was that he wanted to be self-employed and have a little bedding business that he could grow predominantly flowers and trees. Khalid loves Syrian flowers, particularly roses, of course.
So far, so wonderful, this story. I mean, my eyes are sparkling as I try to imagine what Khalid's garden looks like. But, and this is where things just become awful, what happened?
So we don't really know, John. He went out yesterday morning with his family, came back a couple of hours later, and his greenhouse had just been completely decimated. Not the outside structure of it, but just all of his plants, carnage. And he had 2,000 plants in there, and he's managed to save 250. The rest are gone.
So some word that I can't even say on national radio has... So this is deliberate, isn't it? So someone has come in and done absolutely willful vandalism. And do you think he was targeted as a refugee?
Well, I had a chat to him about that this morning, and that's, I think, if there's the greatest sadness for me personally, it's that he is now feeling that it is a deliberate act against him personally, and he was questioning for the first time I've ever really heard him question it. Is this because I am Syrian, and is this because I'm starting to do well here, and people may resent me for that.
Right, so he made this beautiful garden that you have described as the most intensive backyard garden you've ever seen. Someone has come in and vandalised it, which is a terrible situation, but in the emotional roller coaster ride that is this narrative, the community is going to respond on Saturday, right?
The community has just gone nuts for him and his family, and so we had a lot of people requesting that we put up a Give a Little page, but what we thought would be more of a community building response would be to have an event where we invite the community to just come and pot up some new plants, to bring some potting mix along, some pots. Khalid would especially love to have any cuttings from people's gardens, particularly special roses. He would love to just meet all of the people that have really pouring their hearts out to him and his family. And we just thought, actually, there's a special chance to really do something good as a community and build something together that actually helps the family a little bit. The family, you know, obviously they've had such an amazing experience integrating into New Zealand and have been so blown away by the love wrapped around them. So it was quite a thing for them yesterday to come home.
Right, for everyone in the Wellington region who's listening, and I'm delighted to report there will be lots of those people. What time and what address?
Okay, so they can come to, we have a community enterprise hub, and we're at 310 Waifetu Road. It's called the Remakery, and Khalid will be there from 10 o'clock.
That's Julia Milne. So just to give you a reminder of that address, 310 Waifetu Road, Lower Hutt, from 10 on Saturday morning if you want to take part in rebuilding Khalid's garden. So much feedback coming in tonight that you crashed the tech system, which is a very exciting development, unless, of course, you're the person who has to repair the tech system. John, let's go to paper instead of plastic bags. The actual process of growing sustainable forests for this purpose helps the environment, says Anne. Nuts, says this person. I love plastic bags, so useful for rubbish bags, wet clothes, wrapping frozen yogurts in so they don't make the sandwiches soggy, etc., etc. I'll miss them. Sad face emoji. You know, Nat Rad is going to rack and ruin. I've just read out sad face emoji on here. I'd like to apologise to all traditionalists listening. Plastic bags, Pack and Save sells more plastic bags than any other item and charge 10 cents. Biodegradable plastic bags cost less than 1 cent each. Why haven't they at least done that, asked James. Actually, James will ask that question. When I'm out without a shopping bag, I have collapsible cloth boxes that I keep in the boot of the car. Just keep in trolley at checkout, then transfer. This hoo-ha on plastic bags, says Mark, appears to be just another income stream for more profit to the supermarkets. At present, Countdown supply biodegradable plastic bags. I find the shopping bags extremely useful around the house and garden. It's not necessary to use petrochemicals in manufacture of the bags. To replace the function of the bags will require the extra expensive bin liners for the kitchen waste disposal, what a dog walker is going to use to clean up after their dog's crap on the footpath. Use of paper bags will have to replace the plastic at increased cost. Paper doesn't necessarily break down as fast as biodegradable biodegradable plastic. Why don't they offer brown paper bags as an alternative to plastic? And I use my plastic bags as bin liners. If I don't have them for shopping, I'll have to buy actual bin liners. Why don't they sell paper bags? This one is naughty John. Nature has run a lot of the Caribbean, but nothing quite as disastrous as Donald Trump. And this one is extremely naughty Katrina Batten. Is Katrina going out tonight? She looks very swish, asked this person. Now, far be it from me to objectify you, but you do look very swish indeed.
Thanks.
Are you going out?
No.
Oh, you just look swish.
Because I'm on the telly. You have to look swish on the telly.
Well, it's nice. It's nice.
Well, that's nice. Thank you very much, person who said that I look swish.
But we're going to draw a line there. I think swish is as far as we can go in terms of commenting on people's appearance. Otherwise, things really have gone to hell in a handcart, haven't they?
Have.
Right.
We're on radio, so it doesn't matter what I look like.
That's right. We're coming up to the pips, which are also very swish and never fail to excite me.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten aho. Investigators have revealed more details of the meticulous planning behind the mass shooting in Las Vegas. Stephen Paddock killed 58 people and wounded more than 500 in a shooting spree using high-powered weapons from a hotel overlooking a music concert. 47 firearms have been found at 3 separate locations. Investigators say the arsenal appears to have been purchased legally, and some semi-automatic rifles had been fitted with a device that converted them into fully automatic weapons. The BBC's Gary O'Donoghue has more.
Police have now released body cam footage of the moments surrounding Sunday night's shooting. They show understandable scenes of panic and of officers trying to assess where the shooting is coming from and moving people away from the area. A senior police officer said the shooting went on for between 9 and 11 minutes and confirmed that some of the weapons had been altered to make them fire more rapidly.
Gary O'Donoghue in Las Vegas. And Stephen Paddock's girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, has arrived in the United States to be met by federal agents. Ms. Danley flew from the Philippines. She's a person of interest in the criminal investigation into the deadliest mass shooting in modern US history. Paddock's motive remains unclear, and authorities hope Ms. Danley could have some answers. Meanwhile, the ruling Republican Party is dismissing attempts to restart the debate over gun control in the US. The Democratic Party had urged the president to bring together both major parties to devise a solution to gun violence. But Donald Trump says it's not yet the right time to discuss the issue. However, Republicans have shelved a controversial plan to make it easier to buy gun silencers, a plan backed by the powerful National Rifle Association. Gun control advocates and police noted Stephen Paddock was able to be found quickly because flashes from his rifles could be seen as he fired from his hotel room. New Zealand First will meet with National and Labour tomorrow in the first of the coalition talks. Both meetings will be held in Wellington. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
New Zealand First will meet with National in the morning, then Labour in the afternoon. Speaking at a celebration for the National women's rugby team, the Black Ferns in Wellington, the Labour leader Jacinda Ardern said she was not worried National was going first, and it's more important the talks are underway. She says the October 12th deadline set by Winston Peters is possible to meet, and having these initial talks means the parties will be able to move quickly after the result of special votes on Saturday. National's Bill English also met the Black Ferns today. He wouldn't make any comment except a joke while standing alongside 8 of the players. That was about the number National would need to form a government. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
A state of emergency continues for the volcano on Vanuatu's Ambai Island, though the country's geohazard department says the eruption from the Manarovui volcano crater lake has stabilised. The minister in charge of Vanuatu's Disaster Management Office, Ham Linney, says the volcano is still at the second highest alert level.
People think that maybe it's going down, but it's still on level 4, and it will actually be in a level that where there can be an eruption or maybe it will die down. But we believe that after 2 weeks' time, the Council of Ministers have to decide whether the people have to move back or they'll stay on.
Hamlini today visited several of the 51 evacuation camps on Espiritu Santo, where more than 6,000 people have been registered. Authorities say the actual number of people evacuated to Santo is probably closer to 8,000, including those billeted with family members. The leader of the Spanish region of Catalonia says it will declare independence from Spain in a matter of days. The comments by Carlos Puigdemont come days after the region's independence referendum, which ended in an overwhelming yes vote, but sparked a violent response from federal police acting on orders from Spain's government. Today, hundreds of thousands have taken to the streets of Catalonia for a general strike to protest against the government's response. The Spanish king has also waded into the crisis in a televised address to the nation. King Felipe says organisers of the referendum put themselves outside the law. A trust has been set up to try to develop more affordable housing areas in central Otago. The trust has been established by the Central Otago District Mayor Tim Cadogan after he established a working group to look at the problem. He says this was a call made particularly loudly in Cromwell, where house, section and rental prices have continued to greatly increase. Mr Cadogan says the purpose of the Affordable Housing Trust is to work with the District Council and developers to ensure there is an affordability component to developments. He says having a strong voice outside of council, applying pressure and devising solutions has proven very effective in other areas. It's 6:05. Sport. North Queensland Cowboys superstar Jason Taumalolo is turning his back on his birth country, New Zealand, to play for Tonga in the upcoming Rugby League World Cup. Taumalolo has made 10 appearances for the Kiwis but played for Tonga in the 2013 World Cup. The Daily Telegraph in Australia reports that Taumalolo is upset with Kiwis coach David Kidwell's decision to omit former captain Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor from the squad because of their disciplinary issues stemming from this year's Anzac Test in Canberra. The Kiwis name their World Cup squad tomorrow. The All Blacks hooker Dane Cole says they're short of time to prepare for the last game in this year's Rugby Championship against South Africa in Cape Town. The majority of the squad arrived yesterday after a long trip from Buenos Aires. Due to the travel, the All Blacks probably won't take to the practice field before tomorrow. Meanwhile, Captain Kieran Reid has paid tribute to former skipper Dave Gallagher on the centenary of his death. Gallagher was one of several All Blacks killed in the First World War, and Reid says he's an inspiration to the current side.
Dave was the captain of the original All Blacks in 1905 and went on to lead his men not only on the field but into battle. He was one of 13 All Blacks who lost their lives during World War I. Dave didn't actually have to go to war, but he was so proud and wanted to protect his country, he went and lost his life for us.
Kieran Reid. Meanwhile, Wallabies discard Quade Cooper will face the side he was dropped from when he captains the Barbarians against Australia later this month. That's the news.
He was a sick man, a demented man, a lot of problems, I guess.
Back then, to come out and need to address a mass shooting spree was practically unheard of. But over the last decade, things have changed.
Let's start to issue warnings about travel to the USA. The world deserves better from the so-called world leader, the USA, and the sooner the better.
In touch with the world, Susie Ferguson and Guy and Aspinall, Morning Report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, calls for New Zealand to take a lead in the Pacific in the fight against wildlife trafficking, including the illegal trade in ivory. And after 10, actor Timothy Spall on bringing magic to life in Christchurch as his most evil character yet. He plays Carmody Brack in the film adaptation of Margaret Mahy's The Changeover. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula. Mainly fine, isolated showers, mainly in the west. Bay of Plenty and Gisborne to Wairarapa. Fine today, a few showers tomorrow, some heavy about Bay of Plenty, clearing south of Gisborne from afternoon. Waikato to Wellington, including the central high country. A few showers spreading north from tomorrow morning, then gradually becoming fine from the south. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, fine with high cloud. A few showers for Canterbury tonight, spreading elsewhere tomorrow morning before becoming confined to the ranges of Marlborough and Nelson in the afternoon. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, rain spreading north, clearing from the south tonight. Mainly fine tomorrow, but showers developing about Buller. Otago and Southland, a few showers today, mainly fine tomorrow, and the Chatham Islands fine today, showers tomorrow from morning until evening. It's 6:09 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. More feedback coming in on plastic bags. We will have some of it a bit later on. Thank you all. You can text us 2101 or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And don't forget, of course, we are on Twitter and Facebook, where you can not only watch us live, but you can watch some of our stories with pictures and or tape much later. And some of those stories now are being watched a really large number of times. Thank you to those of you who are joining us through Facebook, some of you new to RNZ. Right, police have recovered 47 firearms belonging to the Las Vegas retiree who killed 58 people in the worst mass shooting in modern US history. But Stephen Paddock, who killed himself moments before the police stormed his hotel suite, left clear clues as to why he staged his horrific sniper attack on a nearby outdoor concert. More than 500 people were injured, some trampled in the pandemonium that obviously broke out. It emerged today that Paddock set up cameras inside and outside his hotel room so he could see police as they closed in on him. More than 20 guns, many equipped with devices that allowed them to be fired virtually as automatic weapons, were found in his hotel room at the Mandalay Bay. The ABC's David Cody reports from Las Vegas.
There you go! There you go! Get down! Go that way! Go that way!
Police have released video from the body cameras worn by their officers as they came under fire.
At this point, they're still trying to figure out where the rounds are coming from.
Amid the mayhem, the officers guide victims to safety.
This way, this way. Go, 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 go. That way, that way, that way, that way.
Stephen Paddock was staring down at the victims, and Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo explains he'd made extensive preparations. There were 23 guns stockpiled inside the room at the Mandalay Bay and also cameras.
There was cameras located outside of the room and inside of the room, along with the firearms.
And he had set up how many cameras?
I don't know what the specific numbers do, you know, Aaron? Well, I anticipate he was looking for anybody coming to take him into custody.
The injured and those terrorised by the events say the gunfire never seemed to end. The emergency calls starting from 10:08 p.m. local time.
He continued to fire at a progressive successive rate for approximately 9 minutes.
SWAT officers entered the hotel room on the 32nd floor 72 minutes after the shooting started. But Sheriff Lombardo is defending his officers' actions.
Patrol officers evaluated floor by floor of the space between 29 and 32 where the suspect was. They formed a security. They evacuated rooms, and they formed a perimeter at the suspect's location.
The US President Donald Trump's labelled Stephen Paddock a sick individual.
He was a sick man, a demented man, a lot of problems, I guess, and we're looking into him very, very seriously, but we're dealing with a very, very sick individual.
But he's avoiding any response that'd involve a crackdown on the estimated 300 million guns across America, saying a debate on gun control will perhaps come, but not for now. Stephen Paddock's girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, an Australian passport holder, is now in the Philippines. Police have described her as a person of interest and want to speak to her when she returns to the US. While the gunman's brother, Eric Paddock, has again faced reporters in Florida.
When Steve can do this, we are in deep shit. Because there's just nothing there. You find me where someone who's like Steve does this. I hope the hell they find, when they do the autopsy, that there's a tumor in his head or something. Because if they don't, we're all in trouble.
All but 3 of the victims have now been identified. At least 45 patients in 2 hospitals remain in a critical condition.
That's the ABC's David Cody with that report. Republicans in the US Congress have shelved a controversial plan to make it easier to buy gun silencers. Gun control advocates and police noted that the Stephen Paddock was able to be found more easily because the flashes from his rifles could be seen as he fired into concertgoers from his hotel room. Police now believe Paddock, who did not use silencers, adapted many of his semi-automatic rifles to make them fully automatic by using a so-called slide stock. Now, ownership of automatic rifles is heavily regulated in the US, but it seems adapting a semi-automatic is simply, well, all too simple. CNN's Drew Griffin has the details.
The difference between a semi-automatic one-shot-at-a-time assault rifle and this fully automatic assault rifle is stunning. Holy smokes.
90 rounds in seconds.
9.43 seconds, 90 rounds. Polk County, Florida Sheriff Grady Judd says this kind of firepower is not only available, but these legal 100-round canisters were taken right off his streets from drug dealers. This is 290 rounds right here.
290 rounds right here. And you can literally shoot these as quick as you can pull the trigger one time.
The massive magazines, legal. The parts to turn a semi-automatic weapon into a fully automatic rifle, also legal.
Interestingly enough, you can buy this online.
And the Las Vegas shooter may have used another modification, a slide stock, perfectly legal aftermarket component. According to the manufacturer's video, it's easy to assemble on an assault rifle, and the results, though technically do not make a machine gun, ask yourself if you can tell the difference. The slide stock is legal to buy and to use. Former ATF agent Sam Rabati calls it a workaround of the gun laws, not a loophole. That may make no sense to you. This will make even less sense. Kits you can buy online to turn a semi-automatic rifle into a fully automatic weapon. Legal to buy, yet illegal to actually use.
The conversion kit itself is legal, but when you use it to convert a rifle into fully automatic, obviously then makes it an illegal firearm.
Rabati says the Las Vegas shooter may have used both, and firing from the 32nd story into a huge crowd needed little training, if any, to kill so many.
That's CNN's Drew Griffin with that report. 16 minutes past 6. Let's head from Las Vegas to Christchurch. The group behind the Eden Project, which wants to build a $100 million tourist attraction in Christchurch's Red Zone, says the project could collapse if the government takes too long to give it the go-ahead. Now, the original Eden Project in the UK includes huge biodomes containing a rainforest and Mediterranean landscapes. In Christchurch, the plan is for a structure that looks like a huge eel pot lying on the banks of the river, including natural areas alongside fantastic playgrounds and virtual reality installations. But organisers say the slow red zone decision-making is proving a really major roadblock. Rachel Graham has more.
Eden Project New Zealand trustee David Simmons says the venture could attract up to 700,000 people a year and become a Christchurch icon.
At the heart of it would be immersive installations, interactive storytelling and sort of multi-sensory experiences. So we would certainly hope to work with groups such as Weta and other people who are part of the Eden family who allow you to sort of walk both to the centre of the earth or to be a drop of water, progressing your way through a giant redwood as they are planning in California.
They want to build the attraction on about 70 hectares of red zone land, cleared of homes after the Canterbury earthquakes. But David Simmons says the group is well aware that the red zone factor means they'll have to do extensive testing of the land, and the structures will need to be carefully designed.
So they have to be designed to be light on the land. They have to be able to withstand the various storms that nature will throw at them here in Canterbury. And we can't really progress the plans until we have knowledge of the sort of detailed geography, soils that the site provide. And without those, we can't proceed to fundraising, hence the sense of urgency about this project.
Noel Smith has lived in Retreat Road for 20 years, across the road from where the project would go. He's delighted at the prospect.
This particular street is
further down it's being used as a dumping ground for rubbish. And I think if it was utilised and with a lot more traffic, there would be less chance of people dumping there. And I think it would lift this whole area, actually.
However, 2 other locals who regularly walk in the area weren't so convinced.
I don't like the fact that it's something that you've got to pay for. I'd prefer to have big parks for the kids that are free to go to, skateboard parks, rather than a big dome that you have to pay to get into.
I can see the concept is a good idea, but like Sam said, I'd rather have something that's for the community and for the children that are still living around here and for the rest of the community in Christchurch, really.
The Eden project in the United Kingdom costs around $50 New Zealand for an adult entry and $25 for a child. However, they have a discounted price for locals. The Christchurch group hopes to get private and public funding to meet the $100 million cost, and say they don't yet know how that would be divvied up. First, they want to raise $1.5 million to complete a full concept plan, but David Simmons says it's difficult when there's no certainty about the plans for the red zone.
We are, I think, all collectively frustrated by the sort of legislation and the process, which requires, certain things and ongoing consultation and a timeline that now looks long.
Regenerate Christchurch, which is tasked with developing a plan for the red zone land, which will then be approved by the government, says the Eden project appears to align with the vision for the area, as do many of the proposals they've received. It wouldn't say whether a decision could be made within the next 6 months, as requested by the Eden project, but says it realises there is a need for certainty as soon as possible. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, this is Rachel Graham.
Let's stay in Christchurch, where the High Court has heard from the man accused of murdering Marcus Tucker, whose badly burnt body was found by a lake south of the city last April. 53-year-old Peter John Carroll was charged with his murder. The trial is reaching its final stages. Our reporter Logan Church has been at the court.
The Crown and prosecution gave their closing statements to the jury this afternoon, after 2 weeks of hearing from witnesses. Peter Carroll doesn't deny killing Mr Tucker, but says he didn't mean to. The Crown prosecutor, Barnaby Hawes, told the court the evidence shows Mr Carroll clearly intended to kill Mr Tucker.
At 53, intelligent, a man with a knowledge of the world, it is reasonable for you to infer that he knew that if he hit someone in the head with a heavy object, such as that steering lock, they would more likely than not die. This is common sense, and there's nothing to suggest that the defendant lacks common sense.
Earlier this morning, the jury heard from Mr Carroll himself, who described how he struck the victim at least 6 times with a car steering wheel lock. Mr Tucker died from those injuries. Defence lawyer Tim Fournier told the court that there is no evidence that Mr Carroll expected Mr Tucker would die.
The reckless intent, you have to know at the time you're assaulting somebody, actually have it in your mind. Not that he should have known or could have known or ought to have known that those blows could have caused death. The Crown has to prove that he actually did know.
Judge O'Driscoll will sum up the case for the jury tomorrow morning. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Logan Church.
22 minutes past 6. There is nothing more powerful in our society than being able to read and write. That was the message to a group of Rimutaka prison inmates as they celebrated their graduation today from a literacy program run by the Howard League. Other graduates had completed courses run by the Correspondence School. Around 70% of prisoners lack the literacy skills to manage in a modern society, and nearly that percentage lack basic numeracy skills. Anne-Marie May attended the graduation.
Ray, not his real name, completed a course in classical studies while behind bars at Rimutaka Prison. He says help from the Howard League has made a real practical difference.
That's been the revolution of the Howard League coming in and bringing us together and giving us a room and, more importantly, a table, a flat surface on which to work rather than on our knee in the cell. And also the Howard League have inspired us and lifted our aspirations, encouraging us it's okay to be learning at no matter what age and that we can always do better.
The Corrections Chief Executive Ray Smith congratulated the graduates on their bravery in taking the opportunity to educate themselves. He said they will be able to share their reading and writing skills with their families, and they also serve as role models for other prisoners.
It's easy to blend in with the crowd. In some ways, much easier to do that. Prisons aren't easy environments to exist in at times. So I think you've been brave in stepping forward and doing what you've done. And a whole lot of other people will do that because we're celebrating this here today.
The Chief Justice, Dame Sian Elias, also attended the ceremony and told the graduates reading was an essential skill and anyone who couldn't read would end up living on the fringes of society.
You rely on others to read and write on your behalf, even about matters that are private. You need to rely on others too to bring to your attention the things that you need to know. You get your knowledge through filters. You can't fill in the forms that our society requires for everything.
Another graduate, Jack, again not his real name, studied English, maths and tertiary study skills through the correspondence school and is currently working towards NCEA Level 3. He hopes to do a degree when he leaves Rimutaka and says most of the prisoners in his unit have been supportive of those giving study a go and see the benefits of it.
You have a group to study in, and if you're not quite up to scratch with everybody else, they will bring you up to scratch. And it also gives you skills to say if you need help on the outside, you can get a group of friends who study together and actually make your own group.
Lessons that both the inmates and authorities hope will help them stay out of prison for good. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
Coming up to 25 minutes past 6. We've been in Christchurch a bit tonight. We're going to go back there because the first project designed to repopulate Christchurch's residential red zone is about to open in the form of a cycle and walking track. Now, unlike most of the government's multi-million-dollar anchor projects, which the city is still waiting to see, this initiative has a tiny budget, just 50 grand. But as Conan Young reports, while its budget may be small, its ambition is large.
A trail from the centre of Christchurch to the sea along the Avon River has been a dream of Evan Smith's for the past 3 years. The former Red Zone resident and Avon Autocado Network spokesperson took his chance when he heard the City Council was about to strengthen stop banks along the river and asked if it would mind creating a trail along the top of them at the same time. He says a $50,000 grant from the Ministry of Social Development to his group to help foster community wellbeing helped the project get over the line.
We'd like to be of a standard where children on bikes with trainer wheels and people in wheelchairs would be able to access and enjoy it, and we'd like that to be from the city right out to the sea, so the full 11 to 12 Ks. That's still a work in progress. There's a lot more to be done to complete the job.
Keen to get the trail open for cyclists and walkers in time for summer, Evan Smith says an official opening will happen in the middle of this month, while work continues on finishing the entire 11-kilometre length of it.
Probably from the town end, it's going to be more accessible for people with wheelchairs and with young kiddies, but on bikes. But both ends, we do have a serviceable trail at both ends.
Bridge repairs and never-ending roadworks have made getting from A to B difficult in Christchurch lately. Evan Smith hopes the trail will help change this.
That's really important for people, that they manage to reconnect, and reconnect also across the river from one side to the next. It's important that people can use it as a thoroughfare again, like you've just seen.
He says the trail is a gift to the city's east and those living on the edge of the red zone who have done it tough since the quakes.
In the future, they will have the most sought-after houses in Christchurch. This would be a wonderful corridor, green-blue amenity, and it'd be wonderful to be living adjacent to it. It's taken some time. They've had to go through 6 or 7 years of it being a war zone, and it's been a real scar through the east, but it's gradually healing, and I think it will heal at an increasing rate from now on.
But he says the pathway from the city to the sea will also help unite the west of the city with those in the east.
I think it is already. It'll encourage people from the west side of town to come exploring in the east, but also give people from the east easy access to the west as well, and to the city. It's connecting the city to the coastline, which is really important, I think.
The project means a lot to Evan Smith, who raised his family in one of the 8,000 homes that were demolished here after the government decided the land was unsuitable to rebuild on again.
I can still imagine the house being here quite vividly, and the backyard and where the kids used to play and everything else. It's still very real. And there's really meaningful pieces of the landscape still here that have some significance, only to my family, to nobody else. That tree there, the loquat tree, we planted when my son was born.
The trail will be officially opened on the 15th of October, with groups starting at either end and meeting in the middle. In Ototahi for Checkpoint, ko Konanyang Tēnei.
Quite amazing to look at those pictures and remember what used to be there. Plastic bags, so much feedback tonight. Thank you. The UK Food Safety Authority last week issued warnings against bag reuse, noting problems with food poisoning from build-up of bacteria in reused bags. This is well documented. Please report on their findings. Best regards, Richard. Thanks, Richard. We'll look those findings up. Bread bags are perfect for cleaning. Bread bags are perfect for cleaning up after your dog, and use newspaper to line your bins. Mucky, wet veg peelings should be going in your compost. Come on, people. Your convenience isn't worth more than the lives of marine creatures. Hi, John, we're in Southland. We put the shopping in the trolley, wheel it to the truck and throw it in the back. Not a bag in sight. Cheers, Mike. Cheers to you, Mike. Claire says biodegradable plastic bags are only biodegradable in a commercial composting system, not in a garden compost bin. And, little known fact, biodegradable plastic bags don't break down in landfill as they need a lot of oxygen. Unless you put them in your garden to decompose, they aren't much of an alternative. Still better a small step than no step at all. An enormous amount of feedback tonight. We really enjoy and appreciate your engagement, and we're always delighted to hear from you. If you have story suggestions or things you think we should know, do email us, checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. On behalf of all our excellent and hard-working team, thank you for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Investigators have revealed more details of the meticulous planning behind the mass shooting in Las Vegas. New Zealand First will meet with National and Labour tomorrow in the first of the coalition talks. The state of emergency remains in place for the volcano on Vanuatu's Ambai Island, despite the eruption from the crater lake stabilising. And Greenpeace has welcomed countdown supermarkets phasing out the use of plastic bags, but say there's a long way to go. Our next news and weather is at 7.
November's 7.8 magnitude earthquake turned the heavy flow of tourists visiting Kaikoura into a trickle.
We were busy and the tap just went off, so it's had a huge impact.
After a tough winter, not all businesses have survived.
It's just come to the crunch that it's just too quiet, can't keep going any longer.
I'm Maya Burry, and Insight investigates how much Kaikoura has recovered